torpedo boats approaching at maximum speed. Almost simultaneously, 3 unidentified jets race overhead.
First one, I saw him making this 180-degree turn straight at us. And then suddenly there were orange flashes under the wings.
What we heard was cannon fire bullets coming off those jets, going across the deck, chasing our guys down the deck, killing our guys.
The rockets came through the gun mount straight through, blew these sailors into 2 pieces.
Smoke, fire, the deck was literally slippery with blood.
You have 50 caliber armor-piercing rounds going completely through the ship. Rockets putting 8-inch holes in quarter-inch steel. There's no place to hide.
They said, stand by for a torpedo attack, starboard side. I mean, everybody just looked at each other and said, no way. No way at all. We still didn't know who was attacking us.
But soon, the identity of the attackers would be revealed. And when it was, it would trigger a cover-up, which has lasted more than 30 years. The events leading up to the attack on the USS Liberty begin years earlier, during the Cold War, as Russia and America place secret listening posts around the world, hoping to gather military intelligence on each other. When these listening platforms are extended into the ocean, the USS Liberty becomes part of a small, top-secret fleet of intelligence-gathering ships. It is controlled by the Navy, the Department of Defense, and America's most covert organization, the National Security Agency.
NSA was formed in total secrecy, and the activity that it engages in, which is electronic eavesdropping on a worldwide scale, is one of the most secret activities of the U.S. government.
As she goes about her top-secret missions, the USS Liberty is given a cover story. The government states the Liberty is a scientific research ship studying electromagnetic radiation.
Actually, we had 100 intercept operators in this huge room listening generally to anything and everything that was out there.
The USS Liberty carries a total of 294 men. They're divided into 2 completely different crews. While one crew runs the ship, 100 communication technicians operate the listening and cryptographic equipment in a top-secret compartment known as the Spook Shack.
There was nothing we couldn't copy. Our radios were capable of copying anything that was out in the airways. AM, FM, video, if it was out there, we could copy anything. It was just an extremely sophisticated ship, state-of-the-art for 1967.
In May of 1967, with the Middle East about to explode into an all-out war, the Pentagon and NSA decide to place the Liberty off the Sinai Peninsula between Israel and Egypt. The Liberty is berthed in Rota, Spain. There, she is given the secret documents and charts she'll need to covertly listen in on the developing war. She also takes aboard some mysterious human cargo.
3 Marines and 3 civilians. They came aboard. We had no idea what they were doing, other than we found out that they were linguists.
The NSA linguists are expert in Arabic and Russian. By June 1st, war in the Middle East is imminent. And while America deploys its mighty 6th Fleet in the Mediterranean, Russia puts pressure on Syria and Egypt to attack.
We were out there just to have an intelligence collector in the area when things started.
On June 2nd, with the situation worsening by the hour, the 455-foot-long USS Liberty, armed with only 4 50-caliber machine guns, begins steaming to her secret destination, captained by Commander William McGonigal. But there is a problem.
Liberty was getting instructions from several groups. One of them was the National Security Agency, the other one was the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Both of them had interest in getting intelligence on what was going on during the Six-Day War.
Because of her sophisticated equipment, the NSA believes the Liberty can accomplish her spy mission posted more than 100 miles offshore. But the Joint Chiefs of Staff have other ideas. Overruling the NSA, they order the Liberty to begin her operation much closer, just 13 miles from the war zone.
The Joint Chiefs of Staff and the people that work for the JCS were more interested in more tactical information, what was being said between pilots and between tank commanders and what was going on the ground. So they had a greater interest in having the ship much closer where they were more able to pick up these shorter range signals.
On June 5th, 1967, with the Liberty now only hundreds of miles away, the Middle East explodes as the six-day war begins. While the carnage mounts, each side accuses the other of starting the conflict. Meanwhile, the USS Liberty steams ever closer to the battlegrounds.
NSA, when they found out this was happening, tried to prevail on the Pentagon to pull the ship back and put it much further off the coast because they were afraid of having it too close to the war zone. Eventually, the Pentagon agreed.
They sent messages telling us to move further away from the coast. These were all lost and mishandled.
Incredibly, through misrouting and negligence, a series of 4 top-secret messages warning the USS Liberty to stay more than 100 miles from the conflict never get to her. And now, as she steams even closer to the fighting, the Liberty asks Admiral Martin of the 6th Fleet for protection. But Martin, like the rest of the United States military, thinks the Liberty is moving away from the war, not directly into it.
We did ask Admiral Martin if we could have a destroyer assigned to us, and he said that the USS Liberty is a clearly marked American ship in international waters, not a likely subject of attack by anyone. If you get in trouble, we can have air support overhead within 10 minutes, request denied. And that was the end of that.
But within 72 hours, everyone would regret that decision. In the early hours of June 5th, 1967, as the USS Liberty steams ever closer to the conflict, the six-day war ignites. In the first hours of the war, Israel's pinpoint bombing destroys 441 planes, virtually the entire Egyptian Air Force. The attacks continue throughout the day, and by nightfall, Israel attains complete control of the sky. By June 6th and 7th, Israel has destroyed the Egyptian armored force in the Sinai Desert. It has also captured the old city of Jerusalem and the West Bank from Jordan. On the 7th of June, Jordan and Israel accept a ceasefire call from the United Nations. But Israel is still at war with Egypt and Syria. And on June 8th, the 4th day of the war, at 5 a.m., the American spy ship USS Liberty is now exactly where she shouldn't be, 13 miles off the Sinai Peninsula. Below decks, the communication technicians are hard at work, for there were crucial reasons the Liberty had originally been sent so close to the fighting.
We were tasked by the National Security Agency to find out if Russian nationals were piloting Egyptian planes.
At that time, there was concern in the United States about some Russian long-range bombers that were stationed at Alexandria. The United States was concerned about who was controlling these.
The Liberty is equipped with a unique 16-foot dish-shaped antenna, which is able to bounce captured intelligence information signals back to the NSA receiving station in the United States. But the Liberty's sophisticated spying equipment is not only monitoring the Arab states. Like a huge vacuum cleaner, it is scooping up intelligence from every source, Arab as well as Israeli.
Exactly what our guys were doing, I would assume, is still classified today. Exactly what they were listening to. A lot of times material that is intercepted is sent out in the raw. That is, it's received in code, it's sent out encrypted. We don't try to break it, so we can't read it anyway. We don't know what we've got.
The USS Liberty is now directly opposite the strategic town of El Arish. Israel had captured the town from Egypt 2 days before.
It was a beautiful day. It was pretty much a cloudless day. The sky was blue. You could see all the way to shore with the naked eye.
Early that morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, we had heard through the ship's loudspeaker that we were being overflown by Israeli aircraft. I observed 2 of those flights. They were marked with the Star of David, and they were lumbering, very slow moving, very low, and they were watching us.
We were circled literally 13 times in daylight that morning by pilots that came so close that we could literally see the pilots. They came close enough that they waved and we waved back.
At about 11:45 a.m., 13 miles from where the Liberty is cruising, a huge explosion rocks the town of El Arish. Although black smoke engulfs the beach, there are no other signs of activity. At 1:48, the ship completes a general quarters drill, and crew members who aren't working take a little time to relax.
Some of us went to work and some of us went up on deck to sunbathe.
I was laying out on deck getting sun. If we were concerned, I wouldn't be doing something like that. I wasn't the only one. There were other guys out there getting sun, fishing, just relaxing.
At 2 p.m., as the USS Liberty drifts at about 5 knots an hour off the shores of El Arish, 3 torpedo boats are picked up on her radar.
I noticed immediately 3 surface contacts, steady bearing, decreasing range, very rapid speed coming directly to our ship. And about that time, we heard the jets overflying our ship. They were unmarked jets, no markings whatsoever.
It passed down the starboard side, turned left, and then made a sweeping left turn and was headed straight down the center line when suddenly we had orange flashes under the wings.
We were hit with bombs, rockets, and napalm. Our whole top side of our ship was on fire, and people were dying, and body parts were flying, metal fragments were flying.
Everybody panicked, I think, except the captain. The captain was as cool as he could be.
Now the jets try to knock out the ship's antennas. As below deck, men desperately try to signal for help.
We did not know who was attacking us. We were trying to get communications with any shore station through our teletypewriter communications. At the same time, above decks, the radiomen were trying to get voice communication with anybody they could raise.
We flew a flag. The flag was shot down very early in the attack. We immediately hauled up an oversized holiday flag, which is about 4 times the official flag.
I ran up to the signal bridge and found a halyard that was still serviceable. So we took that halyard and hauled the holiday colors up.
But flying an American flag does nothing to deter the attack. On their next runs, the jets strafe the bridge and decks.
What we heard was cannon fire bullets coming off those jets, going across the deck, chasing our guys down the deck, killing our guys.
To the men below decks, the carnage above is evident.
You have 50 caliber armor-piercing rounds going completely through the ship. Rockets putting 8-inch holes in quarter-inch steel. There's no place to hide.
We didn't know who was attacking us. Some people assumed that the Russians are attacking us.
Fearing they might be the first American casualties in an all-out war between America and Russia, the Liberty desperately tries to get a message out.
And these young kids, 18, 19, 20 years old, were doing what the Navy trained them to do. They were trying to get communications, but they couldn't make contact.
Afraid that military secrets could fall into the hands of an enemy, the communication technicians begin to destroy reams of classified material.
While we were trying to send our messages for help, there was some sort of obvious jamming. There was a buzzsaw sound that blocked all the frequencies. The jamming seemed to cover everything at all times, unless there's the very few seconds that missiles were in the air, and then it stopped. And during those times, they got out our message.
The Liberty is able to get one message out to the 6th Fleet during the early minutes of the attack. It states that they're under fire by unidentified aircraft and need immediate assistance.
Joe Tully was the commanding officer of the USS Saratoga, steaming some 450 miles away.
And he launched aircraft. He saw the aircraft disappear in the distance.
The Liberty's call for help has gone all the way up the chain of command to President Johnson.
We know that President Johnson called a crisis meeting at the White House, which had Dean Rusk and Secretary McNamara dealing with this crisis. At this point, they didn't know who was attacking or what was going on. They did know that aircraft supposedly were on the way. So we're thinking, all right, any minute now, the Sixth Fleet jets are going to come to our aid and drive these people, whoever they are, away. And so we're expecting, salvation at any moment. And it just didn't happen. Finally, after what turned out to be about 25 minutes of air attack, things went silent. We're tending to our wounded.
The surprise attack ends. It has left 9 men dead on deck and scores wounded above and below.
We probably had at that point 30 to 40 tables full of wounded officers and enlisted people.
But there was more carnage to come.
Then the announcement was passed, stand by for torpedo attack, starboard side. Here were these 3 torpedo boats that we had seen earlier at 16 miles, and now they're a couple thousand yards away and getting ready to launch torpedoes.
History undercover. The USS Liberty has endured a 25-minute rocket, napalm, and machine gun attack from the air. 9 men lay dead, and more than 40 are seriously wounded. But now unidentified torpedo boats are seen speeding towards the Liberty in attack formation. Suddenly, they begin firing.
The torpedo boats were methodically machine gunning our ship with armor-piercing bullets. The bullets were coming through the ship like it was a cardboard box.
With the Liberty under intense fire, Captain McGonigal dispatches a sailor to the Liberty's only undamaged machine gun mount and orders him to fire back.
There was one crew member who did manage to get up to the on the bow and get into the gun tub that's on the starboard side, and he did let go with a few bursts at the torpedo boats. This is after the torpedo boats had fired upon us.
As the torpedo boats move closer, Captain McGonigal thinks they may be Israeli. He orders the Liberty's machine gunner to cease fire, as Liberty signalman Joe Meadows desperately tries to ward off the attacking boats.
I just started sending USS Liberty, U.S. Navy ship, over and over and over again.
But the torpedo boats don't stop.
The word was passed from the bridge, prepare for torpedo attack, starboard side.
And all of a sudden, I hear a muffled boom, and the ship lifted up slightly and then just settled back down.
It shakes your teeth. It rattles your whole body. It's like somebody slamming a baseball bat up against the bottom of your feet.
One hit almost amidships in the intelligence collection spaces, blasted a 40-foot hole in the side of the ship, flooded it instantly. A number of men, probably 50 or 60 men, managed to get out of that compartment, and 25 did not. 25 men died from the torpedo.
And then everything went dark. Lights went out, lost the boilers. We were dead in the water.
I came to in the water and it was pitch black. I didn't know what had happened. I tried to stand up, and I tried to stand up on my left leg, and it was like it wasn't there. I just fell over.
The torpedo boats came in. They stopped alongside within 50 feet of the ship. By this time, we had extra large colors of American flag flying. We had clearly American sailors on deck. We had our name in English on the stern of the ship and the ship's number in English letters. They circled us several times, very close, firing upon anything that moved.
They announced prepare to abandon ship, and I figured I was dead.
Some of the men found some life rafts that were intact and would float. They dropped them over the side and floated them, so we had 3 life rafts back there.
I climbed the ladder, I opened the hatch, and I looked out to the sea. And what I saw was the Israeli torpedo boats machine gunning our life rafts in the water as they floated behind our ship.
2 of them sank, 1 of them cut loose, and the torpedo boat went over, picked up that 1 life raft, took it aboard.
And now the stunning truth finally hits the men of the Liberty. Captain McGonigal had been right. The attacker is not Russia or Egypt, it's Israel.
And this was at 3:15, an hour and a quarter after the attack started. And so here we were, presumably sinking 40-foot hole in the side, still on fire. We're expecting any minute to have, a cloud of American jets out there to rescue us.
But help would never come, because an hour earlier, when Captain Tully had launched rescue jets from the Sixth Fleet's aircraft carrier, USS Saratoga, they were suddenly recalled.
His airplanes went off, disappeared, and almost immediately there were orders from the local on-scene commander, Admiral Geis, saying, recall those airplanes. He had received orders from Washington to recall the airplanes.
Secretary of State Robert McNamara sent this order because Washington didn't know who the attacker was. America was not willing to risk a war with Russia or a possible confrontation with the Arab states. But with the Liberty's communications out, and with no one in the Sixth Fleet knowing her exact location, the administration and the military had no idea of what was really happening to the USS Liberty.
Our radios were out because we didn't have any power. Sixth Fleet was sending insane messages saying, where are you, Liberty? Why don't you answer? Answer up. And of course we weren't getting that or anything else.
So 10 minutes, we kept looking at our clocks, our watches, and they're coming, and they never came.
According to the men of the Liberty, the torpedo boat attack lasts 40 minutes. Now, an hour and a quarter after the air and sea attack began, the torpedo boats leave the area. Incredibly, although the Liberty suffers a 40 by 40-foot hole from the torpedo, she hasn't sunk.
The reason it didn't take us down immediately was because the torpedo hit one of the supporting I-beams. So the torpedo just stopped once it hit the ship and exploded. If it had gone a foot either side of that where it actually hit, it would have gone completely through the ship, and then we would have gone down in an instant.
We hadn't sunk, and I was still alive, and I thought, well, maybe I'm going to make it this day. Then we had word that an Israeli troop helicopter, I believe, was coming at us, and that we may be boarded.
A large helicopter came out with a big open door, a machine gun mounted in the doorway. Word passed through the ship that, they've sent armed troops out here to finish us off.
But the helicopter makes no attempt to land or communicate with the Liberty, and after several minutes, it too leaves the scene. For the next hour, not knowing if the attack has ended, if it's about to begin again, or if help is on the way, the Liberty's crew frantically repairs her engine and tries to fix her damaged radio equipment. Finally, at about 4:15, they are able to call for help once more.
We didn't have any encrypted communications. We only had plain language. We went out on plain language that we were being attacked by the Israeli armed forces.
If the Israelis were eavesdropping on the communications in the area, they would have gotten indications that the ship had managed to get out a distress call to the Sixth Fleet. Knowing the Sixth Fleet had a number of aircraft carriers nearby, it wouldn't be long before some fighters would be out there flying to the rescue.
Moments after the Liberty is finally able to radio that Israel is the aggressor, the Israeli government contacts the President of the United States. Israel admits responsibility for the attack, calling it a tragic mistake. A mistake which has taken the lives of 34 American crewmen and wounded 171. On 8th, Washington is finally aware that Israel is responsible for the attack on the USS Liberty. Israel frantically tries to repair the damage of what it claims has been a tragic error, and throughout the day, apologetic letters and calls from Israeli leaders flood the White House. That evening, the USS Liberty, barely afloat, limps towards a naval shipyard on the island of Malta.
We had taken tons of water with the torpedo, which meant the ship would just sway back and forth, and we just steered a sinuous course out to sea that night.
The next day, June 9th, a temporary ceasefire between Israel and Syria has been established. But when skirmishes break out between the sides, Israeli troops smash over Syria's border, intent on controlling the strategic Golan Heights. That morning, the USS Liberty has already left the area, her surveillance equipment destroyed. Almost 20 hours after the attack, as she makes her way to Malta, she finally joins up with the Sixth Fleet. But in Washington, President Johnson and other officials are already secretly trying to control information about the attack. Embarrassed that an American spy ship is caught within a war zone, that American rescue planes have been recalled while the ship was in danger, and that Israel, America's ally, was behind the attack, a cover-up begins.
From the moment the incident took place, the U.S. government did everything it could possibly do to hide the incident as opposed to looking into the incident.
First, the administration publicly accepts Israel's apology.
Our State Department's official response to the "we attacked your ship by accident" was, "we accept your apology, we do not accept the reason," and they let it go because they are our ally.
Next, the crew is controlled.
2 hours after the attack, the word started coming down: don't talk to your shipmate, we want you to write a letter home, but you can't say anything that happened other than, you know, you're doing fine, everything's okay, and that was it.
But sketchy reports of the attack have already been released in America, and when the Liberty arrives in Malta, the press is waiting.
Aside from the 9 bodies already flown to America, 22 more bodies are trapped below decks in compartments flooded when struck by an Israeli torpedo. The Liberty is still shrouded in secrecy. Newsmen are not allowed on board. Sailors on board are not allowed to talk to newsmen.
A naval public relations expert is brought out to handle the media.
Captain, there's been a lot of talk about this ship. What is it exactly?
This was a time of considerable tension. We were evacuating Americans from many of the countries of the Middle East. She was there to assist the embassies in their communications.
Whether on the ship or wounded in hospitals, the crew is kept away from the press. On June 14th, a naval court of inquiry into the attack is held aboard ship in Malta. It will be conducted by Admiral Isaac Kidd, but Kidd's first move stuns the crew.
He knew exactly what was going on and told everybody that this is classified stuff. You're never to talk about this to anybody.
We were all told that if we were to divulge what happened to anyone, we would be court-martialed.
Later, during the formal inquiry aboard ship, it becomes apparent to the crew that the Navy is not interested in conducting an in-depth investigation.
The court was ordered to conduct a complete investigation of all of the events surrounding the attack. Well, in fact, what they did investigate was just the communications involved at the time and the damage control procedures we followed. That's basically the scope of their inquiry.
The court of inquiry was a farce. There was no going into the Israeli aspect. Israel was never queried about it.
During the court of inquiry, the USS Liberty is given a complete overhaul. It seems that the incident and all its evidence is literally being erased from history.
They patched up each and every rocket hole that we had sustained, over 800 rocket hits. They patched them. They patched the hole in the torpedo where the torpedo had come in. They came in, they restructured the ship, they put a new skin on it, and they painted it, and they sent us home like nothing had happened.
We were on the front page, then we were on the 3rd page, then we were on the 8th page, and then we were on the back page, and it was almost that fast. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and out of the paper. I mean, in this country, it was a non-issue very quickly.
On July 29th, the USS Liberty returns to the United States. Her crew is broken up, decommissioned, or given new assignments. And 3 years later, the USS Liberty is sold as scrap metal. For years, the men of the Liberty kept silent. Then, in 1979, Jim Ennis published Assault on the Liberty, a book recounting the details of the attack from the crew's point of view. For the crewmen, it was liberating.
We were loyal right up until Jim wrote the book. I'm glad Jim wrote the book. At least we can express ourselves and finally tell our side of the story.
Since the attack in 1967, Israel has released 4 official reports concerning the USS Liberty. All of them have come to the same conclusion. At the time of the attack, Abba Eban was Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Well, it was totally an accident as far as we were concerned, because nobody expected either that the boat called Liberty would be involved in our region, and it was certainly not involved with our knowledge or with our consent.
But crew members of the Liberty have found contradictions in each of the reports.
They say we didn't fly a flag. We did. They say we were in a war zone where we shouldn't have been. We were in international waters. We were perfectly free to be. They say that they immediately stopped firing when they drew close enough to see our flag. They continued to fire for another 40 minutes.
I don't think there's been any effort here to cover up information. I think Israel has been very forthcoming with the Americans on the issue of the Liberty. Ultimately, a tragic mistake happened.
Another point of contention is that Israel says that its torpedo boats initially identified the Liberty as an Egyptian ship called the Al-Quasar, a ship Israel believed was bombarding their army from the sea. But the Al-Quasar wasn't equipped to bomb anything.
The Al-Quasar was in fact the 4th the size of the Liberty, looked nothing like the Liberty, was in port in Alexandria where it was waiting to be scrapped. It hadn't moved from the pier for years.
It was obviously done on the fly, or they wouldn't have named us the Al-Quasar. They would have given us the name of some vessel that had weaponry enough to shell from the sea.
Israel has also questioned whether the Liberty was flying an American flag. The Yerushalmi report, an Israeli inquiry into the incident 3 weeks after the attack, reported that the Liberty had been sighted at 6 a.m., but was not positively identified as a United States ship.
I know one of the pilots who saw the Liberty the morning of the attack, at 6 o'clock in the morning. That last sighted report that we have says specifically, and he swears to it, that there was no flag.
They claim that the first aircraft couldn't find a flag on the ship. Well, the flag was flying because I put it up.
The same report states that finally at 11 a.m. the Liberty was positively identified. But because of a mix-up in the Israeli war room, its correct identity was not communicated to the Israeli pilots.
Our pilots had no knowledge of any other ship in the area except for the enemy ship that was supposedly shelling our forces.
Between 12 and 1 p.m., I observed 2 additional flying boxcar, Israeli Air Force flying boxcars fly over the ship, very low altitude. Some of the crew waved at the pilots, and I believe the pilots waved back.
There's also controversy concerning whether the Israeli torpedo boats halted their attack immediately after they finally identified the Liberty, or if they continued machine gunning the ship and even its lifeboats.
I understand they fire a number of torpedoes, but when they get close to the boat and they become clear it's an American ship, and of course they immediately cease hostile operations and offer assistance to the Liberty crew.
They claim that they came alongside and immediately offered help. Well, that is the purest of baloney. Instead of offering help, they circled us several times, machine gunning anything that moved, pulled out, came in, machine gunned the life rafts in the water.
Israeli sailors would not have deliberately targeted lifeboats. That's not the way we do things.
There's not a man on board that ship that lived that doesn't believe that they were trying to take us down with all hands. They even had armed helicopters with armed soldiers in them flying over us that they later told the world were there to save us if we went in the water.
It wasn't though they didn't see a flag. The flag was there. It wasn't though they didn't see the name of the ship. It was there. It wasn't as though the ship had 12-inch cannons. It didn't. It had little machine guns. It was in international waters. Every indication is that this was done deliberately. This wasn't an accident.
But if the attack was intentional, as the crew believes, why would Israel have attacked an American ship? For more than 30 years, the mysteries surrounding the attack on the USS Liberty have intrigued historians.
My basic approach is that this was a tragic error. The fog of war is a very serious issue, and my explanation here is that the Israelis got mixed up. They saw this alien ship. They didn't know what it was. After all, it was a ship that was not supposed to be there.
As a Middle East scholar, I've never believed that it was a mistake. I would believe the crewmen. I can see why the Israelis, in retrospect, for very important reasons of national interest, have declined to supply information and have tried to minimize it. After all, it was a disastrous mistake in judgment.
Over time, different Israeli versions have come out because different people have spoken and feel free to speak in part to protect themselves personally. So I'm not surprised that there are different versions.
I don't think there's anyone who has proved, who's shown any serious evidence that there was in fact a conspiracy. This was an honest mistake in the height of battle.
But crew members and many historians believe there were reasons why Israel may have considered the USS Liberty a potential problem. On June 9th, Syria had accepted a UN ceasefire order, but that morning Israeli troops and armored forces smashed deep into Syria, capturing the strategic Golan Heights.
Yes, the Liberty attack came before the Israeli attack on Syria. And yes, the Israelis might be concerned that somebody would know about their plans.
Their advance was so quick, and the collapse of the Arabs was so rapid that the Israelis decided midway into the battle to go all the way. The Americans didn't want them to, and therefore it made sense for them to blind the USS Liberty.
First of all, you assume that only the Liberty could reveal those plans. Secondly, it ignores the point that the Johnson administration, from the president on down, was prepared to wink at the Syrian attack. Now, when the Israelis were too successful for America's taste in Syria 2 days later, we ended the war. We forced Israel to end the war. That's true.
By June 10th, the Six-Day War was over. Israel had been victorious in a struggle whose repercussions resound to this day. But for the men of the USS Liberty, there have been few victories. Over the last 30 years, they have continued to suffer countless insults and indignities from their own government.
Captain McGonagall's Medal of Honor seems to have been presented and designed to minimize it as much as possibly could be.
He was severely wounded in the leg, and he stayed in command of that ship until he was ordered off the bridge so that his men would know that he was still in charge and they were going to make it.
Usually these things are done in the White House by the president.
The Secretary of the Navy went to the Navy Yard in a back room and gave our captain the highest award this country awards its military heroes. And to this day, no president has ever corrected that wrong.
At Arlington National Cemetery, there is a mass grave for 6 of the Liberty crewmen who could not be identified after the attack.
The original epitaph on the tombstone was killed in the Mediterranean.
Historian Richard K. Smith told me, he said, this sounds like they died in a taxi cab accident in Beirut. It didn't even mention our ship's name.
The USS Liberty and the men of the USS Liberty are some of the most highly decorated naval combat veterans since World War II. Yet, the Navy doesn't want to have anything to do with us.
To me, the biggest mystery is why our government is still covering it up after 33 years. Why they refuse to talk to the crew. Nobody has ever seriously talked to the crew.
We just, a bunch of guys that were in the service got attacked, and then after the fact, we find out there was a cover-up. There was a downplay of the events, and it just keeps going and going and going.
For more than 30 years, the men of the USS Liberty have tried to find anyone who will listen to them. Along the way, they've had to deal with the personal after effects of the incident.
Some men are still undergoing psychiatric treatment. Some of them are on various drug rehabilitation programs. Some have nightmares, and some never think about it. They pushed it to the furthest part of their mind.
After the attack, for 10 years, I crawled into a bottle and I stayed pretty much drunk for 10 years. And I finally got help and got over that part of my life, but it affected everybody differently.
In 1982, the survivors of the USS Liberty formed their own Veterans Association. They created a website which tells their story. And every few years, they have a reunion on the anniversary of the attack.
I would like to present you Captain William Bill McGonagall.
We're family. We've been through these things together. A lot of us are closer to our shipmates than to anybody else, our closest friends.
You know, what are we going to do? Are we going to go crazy over all of this? Are we going to let this rip us up? We can't, because we've got 34 men to remember.
The best way to remember those men is the way I try to remember them every day, and every time I get a chance to voice their memory. They were serving their country, and every one of them was a hero.
They, to a man, died with honor, and unfortunately, there was no honor bestowed upon them by their own government.
We've been asking, we've been begging, we've been doing everything short of offering the blood of our firstborn son just to get Congress to investigate the attack. They will not do it.
What needs to take place is a full-scale investigation. Israel is supposed to be our friend and ally. The least they could do is turn over the people who were involved in the incident and have them testify before a congressional hearing.
I think my shipmates would all be satisfied if the United States government simply told the truth. They, somewhere at some level, they know what happened, why it happened, how it happened, that it was covered up, that it was deliberate. And somebody ought to tell the truth. It's 33 years is too long to tell a lie like that.
Israel eventually paid the United States more than $12 million in compensation and issued an apology, but maintains the attack was an accident. In April of 1999, survivors of the Liberty were together once again, this time to say a final goodbye to their skipper. Captain William McGonigal died at the age of 73 and was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Many of the men who served under Captain McGonigal filed past his grave, each leaving a single white rose. They wore jackets bearing a special message, USS Liberty, remember. For the History Channel, I'm Arthur Kent. Thanks for watching.